part 1, I talked about the different ways in which we can try to decrease activation. I have the enzyme move faster. We talked about acid-base catalysis, we talked about catalysis, we talked about intermediate formation and proximity effect. We have one more to talk about before we can pull it all together. And I'm reminding you that simply binding the enzyme tighter is not going to work. And making the enzyme work faster on the enzyme is not going to work. So let's take a look at the next one. Now we need to do some more concepts. First is the transition state. The transition state is a fleeting and unstable stage between the substrate and the converted product. It's characterized by distorted bond angles and bonds, and it cannot be detected or isolated. So this is an invisible transition. How do we know a transition state is present? Since we can't see it, how do we know? Well, the idea is if I'm going to go from this side of the room to the other side of the room, somehow I have to cross over. Let's say in Star Trek and I get transported by the super efficient transport mechanism. So obviously this is the product, and over here is the substrate. Then I had to pass across from it. And that has to be, there has to be a transition state between, otherwise I'm sliding back and forth. So it has to be present, even though I cannot see it. It's not like an intermediate, because if I was an intermediate right here, so I could walk over, and then I would just stand right here. I'm an intermediate. I'm either the substrate or the product. But now I go over and I enter the product. So there's an intermediate in between. And by the way, there's two transition states to go from the substrate to the intermediate and the intermediate to the product. So it's always going to be one more transition state than the intermediate. The other thing we need to talk about is the transition state angle. This is a stable model, not reactive, which resembles a transition state. So let's take a look at an example of this. Alright, so now what we have is the substrate over here. And what's the critical thing? We've got a phosphate group, methylene group, carbonyl oxygen, and we have an R group sitting out here. Transition state, we assume, remember it's always in such, we assume it goes in like this. Now we look at this carbon, how many bonds does it have in it? That's not normal, is it? Take a look at this, you can see that's going to be distorted as well. So it follows the definition of transition state. The transition state analog, notice they have phosphate, methylene, methylene. The transition state analog is not the phosphate, methylene. Now we have a carboxylic acid functional, which is not going to do any chemistry. Stable mode. You add it to the enzyme, it's not going to be converted into anything else. However, notice that this matches this matches this partial double bond matches this partial double bond, same atom. The only difference is this is now an oxygen instead of a carbon. So the idea is this sort of looks like the transition state that we proposed. Again, we never know for sure what the transition state is like. But we have the proposal that this is what it might be. So there's two experiments that we can do. First of all, if we make transition state analogs, and we then challenge the enzyme and the substrate with it, we find out many times these make excellent inhibitors. Of course, pharmaceutical companies are very interested in that because that's a way of inhibiting that enzyme reaction if we want to slow down for some medical reason. The second thing is antibody enzyme. This will take a little bit of talking about. If I take a transition state analog for a particular reaction, and I put it into an animal such as a mouse, and I mix in some irritants so the mouse makes antibodies. The mouse makes antibodies against the transition state analog. I can isolate the antibodies, purify it, and I can test it and show that the antibody binds to the transition state with a pretty good information. Nothing surprising about that. What's surprising is I take this antibody, all it does is design the bind to the transition state. What I'm going to do is is challenge it with a substrate. And lo and behold, the antibody is capable of catalyzing the substrate, not what the antibody is supposed to be able to recognize, into the product. The only thing the antibody can do is to bind to the transition state analog, and by inference, bind to the transition state. Wow. Maybe enzymes are designed to bind to transition states, not necessarily to substrate or products. That's an interesting concept. That's touch. Okay, so what we're going to conclude from this is that enzymes are designed to bind tightly transition states and stabilize the transition state. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any bind. If I stabilize the transition state, that automatically decreases the activation energy, because anytime you stabilize something, you decrease its energy. And therefore, it should make the enzyme go faster. So let's go through some definitions. First is acid-base catalysis. This is a type of mechanism where a proton is transferred. Here's no words. Transferring a proton from what? From substrate to substrate, or substrate to an enzyme, or an enzyme to a substrate. All three different ways. It is not transfer of a proton within the enzyme itself. I'm not saying that's acid-base catalysis. It just has to involve the substrate in some fashion. Next definition involves covalent catalysis. In this particular case, we're going to form a covalent bond, typically between the substrate, or the substrate and the enzyme. And it does not involve the proton. This is a bond that's being formed. Nothing has to be transferred in the process. All we do is form the bond. Finally, we have intermediate formation, which is going to be a mechanism involving formation of having intermediates between the two. Transition from substrate to the product. The next one is going to be the proximity effect, which involves limiting rotation, movement, and orientation, which is the same switch rotation of the substrate with respect to each other or to the enzyme itself. And finally, the transition state stabilization, which is an increase of interaction in the enzyme and transition state, which thereby lowers the activation energy and increases the rate of reaction. So we have summary. What can we do? We can provide a different mechanism through acid-base or covalent catalysis. We're still providing a different mechanism. We can have intermediates in the process to make the mountain, break it up into smaller mountains. And then we have the proximity effect and the transition state stabilization. From a numerical point of view, these last two components will provide the biggest increase in rate. However, to do that, you need to many times have intermediates and involve acid-base or covalent catalysis. So they're all going to work together, but the major contributors are going to be proximity effect and transition state stabilization. That's the end of part 2. Stay tuned for part 3.